All right, so I'm here with my good friend Aaron Cabrera, and we've got our video producer Raul Espinosa. I guess I should start rolling the R since I have Mr. Cabrera and Raul Espinosa. We've got a kind of a special podcast today. I'll kind of set the table real quick. So I was challenged by my good friend, Coach Calvin Go Hard Richard. Have to plug him that way. He challenged me a little over 25 days ago to do a 25-day push-up challenge. I know it's normally 22 to signify the 22 plus veterans that commit suicide each day. He wanted to do 25, so he challenged me, and each day that's exactly what I've been doing. The goal has been to raise awareness for PTSD, depression, anxiety, all of the things that lead up to veteran suicide. We've tried to do that a little bit more creatively every day, bring awareness to it. And I think what we've also tried to do is morph a little bit, not just veteran suicide, but suicide in general. And I think with COVID, it's easy to forget that this is an epidemic that's been going on for a long time. Really, Aaron, you and I have known each other since we started VAREP, or helped start VAREP in Austin. Well, we did start VAREP in Austin, 6 years ago? Some odd years ago? It's been a while.
Feels like 50, but yeah.
Feels like 50. VAREP, Veterans Association of Real Estate Professionals, and we've become really good friends ever since. Aaron is as much family as anybody. He really is part. Nancy and I consider him part of our family. We've come to know him really well, and Aaron, I think, has such a unique ability, or I think he has a story to tell that I think can really kind of drive this home. So I figured, okay, for day 25, rather than just doing the 25 push-ups, let's get into it a little bit. Let's talk about it, the impact that it's had on his life, and see where the conversation goes. So without further ado, Aaron, if you would, let's hear about you. Wherever you want to start, my friend.
Oh, wow. Well, I was born in Cuba. I guess that's the beginning, right? And I left when I was 2. I didn't leave. My parents took me, obviously. And I actually was raised in Venezuela. I was there for about 7 years, and I ended up in Miami after that, like all the other good Cubans, because that's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Then after that, ended up in Texas, and I'm leaving a lot of stuff out, obviously, but became a corrections officer for about a year. Realized I hated it.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I hated it.
Whereabouts?
Caldwell County.
Okay.
Yep. And all I did was look at screen for 12 hours a day, 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. and go home, go sleep, and then do it all over again. I realized this is not life.
How old were you?
23, 22, 23.
Okay.
Yeah, I got a little late start in life because I dropped out of high school, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and I was just kind of meandering around.
Yeah.
And then after that, my corrections instructor was like, "Hey," I was like, "Hey, do you want to join the Marines?" And I said I wanted to join the Marines. So he's like, "Yeah, you're not a Marine." And I was like, "Wait, what does that even mean?" He's like,
what does that mean?
Yeah, you're too cerebral for the Marines. I'm like, I don't know what that means, but so I talked to the Army recruiter, and he talked to me about being a scout, and he told me a bunch of things that scouts did that turned out to be absolutely untrue. And but the job was great. Like I couldn't, if I could do it for another 30 years, I would have done it.
Yeah.
Especially deployed. Like once you do your job deployed as a scout, that's when you have the most fun. Training, things like that. Yeah, it's just monotonous muscle memory type stuff. But once you put your training to practice, it's almost like going to college for 4 years and not being able to do what you went to school for. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. So I became a scout, and I did that for 10 years and got medically retired in 2011. Was injured in Iraq my first tour by an IED. Had a piece of shrapnel. It's called a 155. Essentially, it's just like a big bomb. Mortar rounds are kind of like bullets that you drop in a cylinder and it kind of shoots off. There's a couple laced on the ground, and we hadn't seen them. It was midnight that night, and we had a platoon enforced curfew. We were essentially telling people, "Hey, go back inside because we don't want you to get hurt." We just didn't want to have to deal with people after midnight. And these guys were outside, and we, told them to go inside. And he was like, "Hey, we love what you guys are doing. We love Bush. We love America." And then as soon as we started moving out, those guys are actually, when we told them to go back inside, they went out behind the back of the house and blew a couple IDs that were on the road. And one of the pieces of shrapnel hit me in my back, and came out the front of my stomach. So I was taken back home, which is Fort Hood at the time. I was stationed there for a few years before the deployment. And I was back for 4 months while the hole sort of closed up from the inside out. I mean, you've seen the hole. Yep. And then I volunteered to go back to Iraq to that same tour. I'd say at the 3-month mark, I started really bugging them to send me back because it just kind of felt odd being back. And it was 24 wall-to-wall coverage of the war back then. And any channel, all you see is the war.
Yeah, everybody was glued to it.
Everybody was glued to it, and I was at home eating ice cream. Yeah. And I just wasn't really computing with me.
Just eating away at you.
Yeah, so I asked to go back, and I went back for the remainder of that tour, finished that tour, and then came back. We went to Katrina for almost 2 months to do the whole Katrina recovery effort, like everybody else did.
Yeah.
And came back and then got stationed in Hawaii, where I redeployed to Iraq again a second time. I guess technically a third, but it's a second time. And that's the 15-month tour that I did, which was the long tour that the Army was doing then.
Yeah.
And then came back and got stationed back at Fort Hood. And then I got put out to pasture. I got medically retired, which is, in hindsight, the best thing that could have happened to me.
How common is that when you have, that's a pretty substantial injury, and you were telling me the stories of how you were messing with the nurses and putting a paper towel roll on the way through your toilet or something like that.
No, it was the water, the detachable shower head. The water I would put the thing in the back, and the water would shoot out the front of the hole. She wasn't thrilled about it, but it was funny.
No, but it brings levity to
right.
Pretty gruesome injury. But how common is that to have an injury of that magnitude and then to be able to go back? I guess you were.
I don't have numbers. I don't know anybody that had an injury like that. I know people that had injuries that went back.
Yeah.
That were, I guess comparable to mine, but it's not uncommon to say I want to stay back.
Sure.
And you very well could say that.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a story. One of our medics, his name Burke. He got hurt around the same time that I got hurt. He got shot in the top of the foot. Went back home, and he was actually back with me. It's called rear detachment, which is where they put all the people, sort of logistical paperwork personnel unit, and everybody goes there when they're getting well, when they couldn't deploy, when they're getting kicked out of the Army, that sort of thing. So it's like a holding unit while everybody's deployed in some sort of theater of operation. Burke was with us, young kid, early 20s, 20, maybe 19, 20, something like that. I remember him, he looked very, very young. Got shot on the top of the foot, if I remember correctly. He was back with me, and was sent back with me. And a week after he was sent back, he got shot. One of those 1 in a million rounds, it actually went through the top of his vest, nicked, I want to say, his collarbone, and then just tumbled inside of him and killed him. Yeah. So you have stuff like that happen. Yeah. You never know. Honestly, you never know when you're over there what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Especially if you're in a combat unit out there, doing forward operations.
Sure.
So I don't know how common those instances are, but I know that I didn't feel right, even though I had a young son at the time. He was 1. As a matter of fact, he turned 1 when I got back, the day that I got back from Iraq. And my injury, it was his first birthday. Yeah. It just didn't feel like I belonged at home. I don't know if that makes sense.
Because you're still seeing it, so much coverage, or was it more personal because of your unit, or a combination?
I knew what they were going through.
Sure.
Right. And then you have in the back of your head, okay, these guys are out there doing this. I should be helping. I should be doing something. I should be, because if you don't do something, somebody else has to do it.
Yeah.
It's that old adage, right? So I just had that in the back of my head. And, you know, as a matter of fact, Geraldo Rivera was attached to our unit once. And I saw some of our guys on his show then. And they were out there looking for some sort of high value target that we were, you know, because back then they had these playing cards.
The cards, yep.
And they all had,
I remember that.
And we would just all carry them and be like, all right, we're getting this guy. Now we're getting this guy. We got intel on this guy. So that's what we were doing. And I saw my unit and they're like, oh, that's 1A Cav right there, 1st Cav Division. I'm like, oh man.
Literally, when you say saw, you saw them on TV. You saw them on, okay.
Yeah. They had an aerial and they had a night vision of my platoon Humvees going down the road to knock, like I was gonna say knock on somebody's door, but we did it a little more aggressively.
Forcefully.
And to grab somebody out of their house. And I was like, man, that's a spot that I should be doing that. I shouldn't be back home. What I thought was just when I was just eating ice cream and getting fat. So
yeah. And what rank did you retire as?
Sergeant. Yeah.
So talk a little bit about, if you wouldn't mind, coming back, I guess, the finality of it when you were retired. What was that like?
From the whole, after the time that I was in?
Correct.
It was interesting because you're in such solid footing the whole time you're in the military.
Yeah.
They tell you what to do, how to do it, when to do it, how to get dressed.
Yeah.
What time. There's very little thing. The military isn't a hard job. It really isn't. All you have to do is do what you're told with the gear that you have, and just put a little effort into it, and you'll be successful. It really is. And there's not a lot of thinking involved, except for upper levels and things like that.
Sure.
But
so coming back from that,
I didn't know what to do. I thought I wanted to take 6 months off. I'm like, I'm not going to do anything for 6 months. I lasted maybe a month, and then I'm like, all right, I'm going to go to school. And then I just bounced around between going to school for different things, to working as a code enforcement officer for a local city here, and then back to school and so on and so forth. And then I started really noticing the PTSD coming through.
Sure.
When I got medically retired, I did something called, it's a dual program, which is medically retired through the Department of the Army and the Department of Veteran Affairs. So when I got out, I was already sort of set financially in the system.
Sure.
But I was on like 22 different meds as a zombie.
Wow.
And I mean, you get, it's medical, it's med stacking is what they call it, right? You get one med for something, and then, or a couple different ones for something, and then you get a couple meds for those side effects, and so on and so forth.
So you're medicating the medication.
You're medicating the medication,
and it's really all about the symptoms instead of the long-term healing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's sort of, I don't want to say it's to keep you sick. I don't necessarily think that consciously they do that, but that's what they're doing.
Because it's probably easier. I mean, that's the easiest way. And I can't begin to understand the system, but I think that you have to look at long-term ramifications, long-term health, mental, physical, that sort of thing. And if all you're doing is treating the short-term symptoms, you're just going to create more and more symptoms, I would imagine.
The thing is, you're going to get me started on the VA. The thing is, there is no thought of long-term anything with the VA.
Which is
unfortunate. I could be seeing a psychiatrist one day, and which happened. I saw a woman, an amazing woman, and she was very understanding, and she's like, no, you can't do this, you can do this, and very open to me suggesting things.
Sure.
And then one day she was gone, and now I have another psychiatrist where I have to sit down and
start all
them,
over again.
Start all over.
Wow.
It's not like they can sit down. So there's no thought of, hey, we don't want this guy in the system. It's let's just exist within the system.
Which in the civilian world, I would imagine most people that see therapists and whatnot, and I have a daughter that's kind of going down this path, so I know a little bit about it, but you see the same therapist for years.
Yeah. That's not a VA thing.
Because it's not something you can just disseminate, in a matter of 30 minutes at a time or an hour at a time. It takes a long time to kind of dig through it all, I'd imagine.
Right. It's possible to have the same therapist, right?
But it's not.
But then one day he's busy and
Yeah.
you show up and he's like, oh, you were double booked. Do you want to see so-and-so?
Yeah.
And then you're like, well, okay, or whatever, right? So it's always, you can never go more than a few months without feeling like you have to start over again at the VA. And that's, especially for mental health, is crucial to be able to feel like you have some sort of continuity of care.
Yeah.
Because that provides that solid footing for you to say, okay, listen, the world isn't as crazy as I think it is. There's people around me that are constants.
Yeah.
You don't find that at the VA.
Yeah. Yeah. So oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, bud.
Oh yeah, no, I was just saying my older brother kind of has a similar experience. Like he served 2 tours in Iraq, and yeah, he came back also and had very severe PTSD, and lost his family. His family was broken apart. He had 4 kids. Just lost everything, and it's been really hard, you know. And I feel bad because, you know, he didn't have a lot of support. So I've always wondered, you know, and same. Also situation where he was just on a ton of medicines that, you know, I question even like, what are the medicines actually, what do they do? What are they for? Yeah. I almost feel like they make him worse because when he's on them, he's just numb and he sleeps around 8 o'clock at night. You know, he's asleep all day basically. And he's just, you know, not all the way there. And I just feel horrible.
You become a zombie. And after a while it's almost like, what's the point, right? And I've had a lot of situations in my life where we're like, okay, well, what's the point of what I'm doing at the current moment?
Yeah.
Which is really at the crux of kind of what we're talking about today. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, see, look, there's nothing wrong with the medication. Some of the medication really does work.
Sure.
Right. You know, you could take something and it works, but the thing is that some of these clinicians, and I'm going to try to be very nice in what I say about the VA, because I don't like the VA at the current moment, but some of these clinicians are just there to just sort of fill a space, right? They'll give you some sort of med, and instead of saying, okay, well, come back and let's see how this works or doesn't work, and we'll switch it. There's a lot of other stuff that goes around that they're just adding upon adding. Medication management is really weird. Like I wouldn't want to be the one to do this, especially with a lot of veterans that, you know, sometimes aren't the nicest people in the world, you know, because they're just kind of sick of everyone's, you know, stuff.
Well, especially if you're rotating people in and out. I mean, you're going to get along with some people. You're not going to get along with everybody. It's just not going to happen, you know, and if you don't have a history with somebody that you can really relate to or feel like that can relate to you, I don't see how you can be effective.
I've said this 1,000 times. It's very unfortunate that veterans and the VA have an adversarial relationship.
Yeah.
And that's exactly how I feel. And I think a lot of veterans will tell you that it's not that they're working with the VA or the VA is working with them or for them.
Yeah.
It's against them. It's constantly against them. And that's why you have veterans not going to the VA.
Well, yeah, if you create that adversarial relationship, there's no trust. And if there's no trust, you're either not going to go, or when you do go, you're just going to be butting heads.
And then you got soldiers, for example, that walk into a VA and commit suicide inside the VA to sort of make a statement. Like it happened here in Austin at the Austin Outpatient Clinic. I don't remember, maybe a year and a half ago, something like that. Someone who walked in front of hundreds of people and took his life.
Wow.
He was trying to make a statement. And whatever it is that you think of, you know, somebody at some point could have caught that. I truly believe that. Like, I don't know what the situation was or what he was feeling at the moment.
Yeah.
Somebody could have caught that. Somebody could have said, listen, what's going on right now? Talk to me. And that could have, or maybe not, but something, right?
Instead of just checking off the boxes saying, okay, well,
which is what it is.
What's really going on?
Yeah.
You know,
I've gotten calls from my social worker, which I actually emailed my social worker. I emailed my social worker and called him a piece of trash because he was one of these people. And I used to have a social worker with the VA here. Amazing, sweet woman. Yeah. I trusted her. I trusted other veterans with her that I would bring. I said, listen, this kid needs help. I knew that kid was going to be able to be taken care of. I got changed to somebody that she went to Virginia just because I guess she moves her family there. Got changed to somebody that wouldn't respond to emails, wouldn't answer the phone. Then I got changed to somebody that was weary of giving out his cell phone. I mean, not his cell phone, his email address. Even told me that because I started talking to him about biases within the VA, and he was like, yeah, we all have biases. We're human. My supervisor knows if it's someone that's LGBT or gay or anything like that, not to send them to me because I don't like that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And it was such a shock to me to hear a VA social worker, this isn't like data entry guy.
Yeah.
This is someone that's there to serve the mental health needs of veterans. To say that about such a high risk population and marginalized population as is the veteran LGBT community really angered me. So I let him know. And then I just said, I don't have, right now I don't have the social worker with the VA because I don't trust them to be able to perform for other veterans or myself the way they're supposed to.
And then what do you do? I mean, if you don't have that trust and you don't have anybody to go to,
Right.
what else is there?
Right.
I mean, you can go private sector, but
yeah. And I'm fortunate where I'm medically retired and I have, TRICARE
Sure.
and other things, but
well, you like who you work with now, right? And I think you did. Mention
Yeah. The veteran
had
the VA has this new choice program that Obama signed back into, I don't know, 2016, I think it was. And it's just like everything else. It took some time to ease into the way it was going to work properly. And there's still growing pains. And I think President Trump signed into effect some expansions of it, but essentially if you live a certain distance away from a VA facility, you can go and ask this choice program. I think it's like TriWest or something, the company that does it, to see somebody private, which is great in theory. It took me almost 2 months to get an authorization for a doctor that I already knew that was already in their system, but they couldn't find in their system.
Well, and you and I have had countless conversations about your experiences with the VA, and we're not here to bash the VA one way or the other. But
I'm ready to do it.
I know you are.
Yeah.
Given the opportunity, I know you will.
Yeah.
But I mean, the bottom line is most of our conversations revolve around the absolute amount of bureaucracy and what it takes to get the simplest things done. It's like an act of Congress. And if you have that adversarial relationship, and if it takes that much effort to get help, how many times, and it's kind of a rhetorical question, but I mean, how many times are you really going to have people that say, to heck with it?
How many times are you going to be at your wit's end until you walk into the VA with a gun and take your life?
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
So let's go back a little bit. You and Raul, you can talk about, your brother if you feel like it, but, you mentioned that, so you came back and you started to notice PTSD setting in. What did that look like? What were your first?
For me, it was see, the thing is I am not a clinician, and this is just stuff that I've learned about myself.
Sure.
You have primary and secondary PTSD.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's called that, but I had primary PTSD from when I grew up with my upbringing and my mom and things like that happened when I was younger.
Which was tough. Yeah.
And then on top of that, I went to war and things. So I had compounded PTSD. I already had depression, anxiety
prior to
that. It just wasn't. It hadn't manifested itself. Yeah. When I got out, or even in country, for example, a lot of us had anger issues. I knew I had anger issues when I was deployed in country.
So is that pretty common? So a lot of you, is that?
Our platoon did. Our entire platoon went to anger management when we got back. So,
but that can't be.
But then again,
just something that's sequestered to your platoon. I mean, I'm sure if a significant amount of your platoon, I would imagine it's probably.
Well, out of a 22-man platoon, 19 of us came back with the Purple Hearts.
Yeah.
Out of a 22-man platoon.
Yeah.
And 2 of us got like double Purple Hearts.
Yeah.
Wow.
Or, well, not me. I got 1, but another buddy of mine got 2. So it was a rough tour because it was the beginning.
Yeah.
Is it like a across the board thing? I wouldn't doubt it, especially with combat arms units like we were. I just know my personal experience from my personal platoon.
Yeah.
We got back, and a lot of us. Here's the thing: when you're deployed, anger is a good thing, right? It's controlled chaos, controlled anger. I used to tell my guys. I said, don't just fly off the handle. Use it while we're working.
Yeah.
So you learn to mask it in other ways. You learn to mask it in your job. So you're constantly just angry and you're constantly just trying to do your job. And you come back here.
Kind of like a football coach getting his team fired up. I
Yeah,
mean,
but
granted, that's way
imagine,
filtered down, but you know,
yeah,
you got to have a certain amount of anger to get the adrenaline going and performing at peak
yeah.
level.
And imagine just being all, like constantly like that.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was there for just over a year, my first tour, except for minus the 4 months that I was, hurt.
Yeah.
Imagine sometimes you're back at a fob and everything's sort of okay. That's still sort of going in the background.
Sure.
Sometimes you're out at a cop, which is a combat outpost, is like a smaller one.
Yeah.
It's more forward of where you would normally be. And that's constantly like your
Yeah.
sleeping schedule's messed up. So it's hard to just take a moment and just breathe. There's small moments like that, but for the majority of the time, you're constantly on guard. And that messes with your adrenal system.
Yep.
And then, so
I mean, you're nonstop. I mean, day, night, when you're resting, whatever, your brain's just going.
Right. And then I got back, and of course, sleeping issues and
Sure.
anger and anxiety and depression. And
so is that where it kind of started manifesting first? We'll go ahead and dig into that a little bit.
For me, it was depression.
Depression. Okay.
It wasn't so much the anger. The depression turned into anger after a while. But for me, it was because I was taking so many things. I felt like a zombie. Sure. And it was like, man, I just don't want to do anything. I don't. And I imagine I was married at the time. Imagine being married to somebody like that. I'm surprised my marriage lasted as long as it did.
Yeah.
Because I was just not a functioning human being. I tried to be, but I just wasn't, until I quit cold turkey on my meds, which ended up being with me having a suicide attempt. But I thought that I was at my wit's end. I just couldn't handle anymore, just going through life and not knowing how I was existing.
Yeah.
I would forget days on end, and I'd be like, what, kind of like what I said earlier, just not joking around, like, what day is it?
Yeah.
That it was truly, I didn't know what day it was. And I just couldn't live like that. And then once you get off of that, and I mean, we'll talk about that in here in a minute, but the anger for me persisted. There's a lot of anger about a lot of guilt issues and things from, again, my younger years when I was growing up, and then stuff that happened in Iraq, guys that I've lost, decisions that I made that are questionable, right?
Yeah.
That I see as questionable. So those are things that I still have to resolve in my head. And I think, as far as like the war stuff, I've gotten pretty good at closing up a lot of loose ends on that. It's been a while. And, I've had this other trauma that's basically said like, hey, this is, we got to take care of this stuff now.
Yeah.
So, it's a day by day thing. I think I've gotten control of a lot of it though.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not as angry as I used to be. You know me. I'm a sweetheart of a guy now.
You're a much calmer person for the most part than when we first met. So a lot more philosophical, which is good. Yeah. So you got off the meds, and that's when. Do you feel comfortable talking about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Everything's on the table. And
was that your first and only suicide attempt, or?
I had one in Iraq.
Okay.
My second tour, that wasn't really like I don't really call it an attempt because I didn't pull the trigger.
Yeah.
But I found myself in a porta potty with a gun in my mouth. But it wasn't like that one would have been, if it was an attempt, it would have been like a completion type.
Sure.
Thing, right. Back in 2013, right?
Yeah.
The end of June of 2013, I got off all my meds, and I was just like, I'm done. I can't take this anymore. And I felt great for like a few months. And then it just started, like every single issue that me and my wife had at the time got exponentially worse.
Yeah.
My anger came out, and then, the resentment grew. We started getting further apart until it was just, there was no coming back from it. Couple other things here, like we got separated, and I came back for something that doesn't really matter. And I was here, and then that was when I had my attempt that I ended up in the clinic in Houston. Menninger Clinic, which is great. I was there for I think like 8 weeks or something.
Right.
Yeah. And yeah, and after that, I'm like, you know what, things are just going to change little by little, and I decided to educate
Gotcha.
myself on who I was and read as much as I could, and start. I'm not good at any one particular thing, but I'd like teaching.
Yeah.
And the thing
Well,
that
you're a great communicator, and I've told you that before. And I think that's what makes you so effective as a veterans advocate. Really anything you put your mind to.
appreciate that. I saw that I could reach people that way,
Yes.
reach veterans. So I became a peer mentor, and I started mentoring veterans, and just trying to get veterans into honestly then into the VA system, because a lot of these young cats get out and they're just, hey, I just want to get out, I want to disappear, want nothing to do with the military.
Yeah.
And they forget that they can at least go get registered at the VA, because one day they will need it. And if they don't, if they wait till they need it, then it's months of bureaucracy, right? Just go do it as soon as you get out. So that's why I started taking people to the VA and started working for the Military Veteran Peers Network, and just a bunch of different organizations that I worked as a peer mentor or volunteered as a peer mentor. Never made any money, but it was helping me at the same time. Learning how to help these veterans and reading up on their issues was helping me understand myself, which is I've been obsessed with knowing myself for the last 5-6 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it's an ongoing process. I mean, something we all go through.
Yeah.
But and you've got, like you mentioned, a lot of those things that were prior to your service that
Right.
you're still dealing with. Last point on your suicide attempt. So was this something that you thought about for a period of time, or did it just kind of come up impromptu? I mean, was there any?
It was impromptu. I hadn't really, I guess I'd thought about it. So suicidal ideations I'm always going to have.
Yeah.
I heard somebody say it on a podcast once that they're fighting the suicide disease. It sort of feels like that.
Sure.
They're in there.
And was there anybody at the time that you could even talk to, or was that kind of one of those periods of time where it was just you?
No, it was just me, really.
Yeah.
I had moved to Houston, and I was like, I need to find a job after I got separated, and I moved to Houston, and I was working 85, 90 hours a week, because I just thought I need to keep myself busy. I was so busy I didn't even buy furniture. I had a nice apartment because I was making good money.
Yeah.
But I was living in a air mattress in a 1-bedroom like apartment in Houston, like downtown Houston. And it was just bad. I just kind of ran myself to the ground. And then when certain things happened with my marriage and that happened, it was, I don't know, I think it was a wake-up call that I needed.
So let's talk about, I mean, there's no really easy way to segue into it, but let's talk about, your personal life, and with Diego, obviously, who, Nancy and I, absolutely adored and came to know, fortunately, for the time that we did. But, talk a little bit about that, what happened, and, if you're willing.
Yeah.
Because I think that, veteran suicide, as much of an issue as it is, suicide in general, it's a huge problem. And I think that it's been stigmatized, and I don't think it's talked about enough. So if you don't mind, and I know it's not going to be easy, but share a little bit about what happened.
No, I don't mind at all. Yeah, suicide in general is I want to say it's a weird thing, but I get it. Just the way that we're living today in society. But yeah. So fast forward a few years, and I'm sort of, things are coming back together. I've had a rough divorce, and I'm putting life together, and I thought that I was trained well enough to see some signs in people.
Yeah.
But I didn't see them in my own home, right? My son,
Yep.
my son was a very sweet, kind,
Incredibly
quiet kid.
Yeah. Very thoughtful, very polite.
Yeah. And he never said that there was anything wrong. And I would ask, and he would say that there was anything wrong. but I would never pry. Right.
Well, in every interaction we had, he would always seem like a really happy kid. Quiet maybe, but he
Yeah.
would come over and and the two brothers would play and just seemed like a very well adjusted kid by any account.
Yeah, and I think he was very intelligent as well. So I think he
Very
knew how to compartmentalize things and have his happy moments, and then at the same time just have
sure.
all these demons inside. Um, there's a couple instances here and there where I asked like, hey, what's going on? And I would see sort of his search history on the phone, and he was looking up depression. Um, he was looking up depression, and he lived with his mom in San Marcos. And I just didn't push hard enough for her to take him to a therapist, right? Um, I'm not going to play the blame game here because obviously there's a lot to go around, but that's one of the things that I regret, right? Um, so I missed it. I missed the things that were going on with him. And I mean, I can, if you want me to detail more specifics about why I think happened with him, but
You share whatever you want to share.
yeah, no, I'm an open book. You know that. He had been involved in smoking pot for a while. I'm not against it. I see no issue with it. But when you're that age and going through the stuff that he was going through,
Sure.
and the environment that he was going through, it wasn't healthy. He was caught trying to smuggle some pot into his school from a friend of his that lived. I didn't know this, a couple of houses down. When I found out, I went to the school. I got everybody involved, the principal, the school resource officer. We had a little meeting. Okay, this is not going to go forward. And I forbid him completely to see this kid. I thought his mom was on board.
Which I think most of us would do.
Yeah. Fast forward like a year and a half, 2 years later, and he's hanging out with the kid again. Apparently his mom's letting him leave. Again, let me try to, my phrasing here. He was going to the kid's house again in the evenings and smoking pot, and apparently that the house had been a house where this is because I called the cops many times on that. Trying for somebody to help me, and apparently in that home there was a home where they were selling, selling stuff, whatever it is that they were selling, drugs, and I could just see the change in him. That's why I recognized him, that he was smoking again and he was lying. And but when I saw that it was just too late. It was the night that he did it when I found that out. And that night I was, I said, "You're coming to live with me. That's it, no more." Right? Because I thought that would have fixed it, But the house has had it's such a weird, such a big divide as far as like the way that I did things and the way his mom did. Like there was a little bit more order in my home. And
sure.
So I said, you're going to come live with me. As a matter of fact, when I found out that because I took him to get a drug test, he came up hot in the urinalysis. I even took my brother at the time with me, just sort of a buffer, because I was pretty hot, and I was going to go down there and say, "Listen, you just need to be a buffer between us so that I don't blow up," because I didn't want to. I wanted to sit down with him, and I did that night, and he just talked, and he opened up to me, and he said he just called me out on a bunch of things, and so that night, I took him back home. I said, "Look, tomorrow's a new day. I love you." Because as a matter of fact, that was the night before his first day of high school. And I said, "Tomorrow's a new day. I love you. Let's figure this stuff out together." And then I left. And like 5 hours later, I was supposed to wake up and go to school because I was going to talk to the principal, his new principal, school resource officer, and just get everybody on the same page. And I said, "Look, my son's it's not any more special to you than anybody else, but he's special to me. So that's why I'm here." And then I got a call from my ex-wife at like between 4 and 5, saying that he was bleeding from the head. and that they were calling paramedics. And paramedics came, and they were there working on him, and I was pretty hysterical on the phone. See, the thing is, like, everything turns to anger at that time.
Yeah.
I was angry. And then I just started being angry at the paramedics,
Yep.
like an idiot. And I just said, I need you. I just kept telling her, I said, you need to call it for me. Are you calling it? Are you calling it? Are you declaring him dead? I was asking.
Mm-hmm.
And she just said yes. And I was at home in Cedar Park, and I had to drive at like 90 miles an hour, crying my eyes out,
Mm-hmm.
to my ex's house in San Marcos, just over an hour, knowing that my son was dead,
He
but
was
not,
already,
but not truly. Like, it's still in the back of my head thinking,
Yeah.
like, I'm gonna get there and it's gonna be fine. Like, maybe she made a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got there, and you know, and then the cops, you know, didn't let me get in, and that was a whole different fiasco. But the cops didn't let me go in the house. And then that's when I found out truly that he was dead. Yeah.
Which is, I mean, anytime you lose a family, I mean, that's got to be a parent's worst nightmare. I mean, I couldn't even imagine. You know, I've got 3 girls, and we have a son that was in the Marines, and Raul, you have children as well, and
Yeah.
you know, that's got to be the worst
Yeah.
thing that can ever happen. Yeah, I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
You know, how do you get over that? How do you deal with it? How do you manage?
I don't know. I don't even know if that's a thing.
Yeah.
I know pain diminishes.
Sure.
Right. You know, Biden's got this thing where he talks about his son's death.
Yeah.
And he says it in such a beautifully artful way, talking about there come a time that, you know, that the visceral pain, he says it differently, obviously, but the pain that you feel will turn to happiness because you'll remember the happy moments, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I know at some point that'll come. I'm not there yet. Like, it's still hard. It's been years, right?
Yeah.
3 years or something like that. And I still can't have pictures of my son in the house. I have him in my office, you know?
Yeah.
But when I see him and I lock eyes with him in pictures, I can't.
Right.
So it'll take years, you know, I know that. You have to process.
And there's always going to be reminders, you know, and you've told me, you know, if you care to share, you know, some of the stories with Jack, your youngest son, you know, and you know, his conversations with you about Diego and questions and all that, and that's, I mean, it's heartbreaking, you know. And how do you answer that? You talk to your surviving family about what happened, you know, especially somebody as young as Jack, who doesn't understand. At the time,
he didn't understand. My ex talked to him already,
Yeah.
which I wasn't a huge fan of it, but
yeah,
I get why she did it.
sure.
It's sort of like ripping the Band-Aid off quickly and have him process it.
And it was done
now.
out of love and
it was
genuine
absolutely.
concern. Yeah.
When it first happened, he was maybe 4 or 5,
Yeah.
right? And he didn't get. We told him, you know, Diego passed away. We said the word "died" so that he understood. He said,
Sure.
you know, your brother died.
Yeah. There's finality to it.
Finality, because pass away is just.
Yeah.
I don't think he would have understood
really,
that before. And he said how, you know, and I said, you know, he had an accident, and to a 4-year-old, an accident is a potty accident.
Yeah.
So then he started equating that and then, you know, little by little, it was every time we passed by like a cemetery, like he knew dead people go in cemeteries. So is my brother there? You know? Or just randomly when we're in the car, he'd be like, I miss him. I miss my brother, you know? And then he'd see that Jack is amazing.
Yeah.
And then like at 6, he'd mention his brother, and then he would see how I would get. Even though he was in the back and I was wearing glasses, he'd be like, I'm sorry for making you sad, puppy. You know?
children have an incredible amount of empathy,
Yeah.
and they,
Yeah.
you know, I think we, as parents, you know, Raul, and I'm sure you can attest to this, you know, we kind of go, wow, they're too young to understand.
Yeah.
You know, and certain things they are, but they have this just incredible sense of what you're feeling. Maybe not everything, but whether you're sad or distraught or angry, you know, and every time you've talked about this, it's amazing, you know, and you know, and you've told me stories of it, you know, I've had plenty of dark moments since, and at least to me, based on what you've told me, I think he helped you quite a
Mhm.
bit.
Absolutely.
You
Okay,
know,
if I will have no issue saying this. If my son wasn't here, I wouldn't be here.
yeah,
I
you've
would have
told me that.
zero issue
Yeah.
saying that to anybody.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I've said it that he's like my anchor to this world.
Well, and there were times, and again, you know, forgive me if I'm crossing the line, but you told me that you thought that he was in good enough hands with your ex
Mhm. And his stepdad.
and his
Yeah.
stepdad,
Yeah, they're
you
great
know,
people.
and but then you'd also tell me about how important to him you are,
Yeah.
and it's just it what an amazing support structure to have.
Yeah.
So after, speaking of support structure, you know, because I think it's important to realize that, you know, what are the things, what are the signs that lead up to it, you know, and what can be done, you know, and place the blame game and all that. But I think what's also important to talk about is what support structure is there after,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Right.
You know, we've talked about this with our friend Rich and all that, and I mean, honestly, it's the people that are left behind, the guilt and everything else. How do you deal with it?
Right.
You know, or what is there any resources for something like that, or any good ones, I should say?
There's such a gambit of emotions that happens
Sure.
after something like that. Because then now there's so many people that were so amazing with me, like you guys and other friends that I've had that were just there
Sure.
constantly, and they were like the rock that I needed
Yeah.
at the time. And then at the same time, you're like, okay, I feel bad. It's weirdly you feel bad because you don't want to like, okay, it's like just it's too much. Like I don't want you guys to have to deal with this at the same time as me, right? So now what happened with me personally was like I was already like I already didn't like people to begin with. I was sort of an isolationist.
Yeah.
That's a word, right?
It
I
is.
think it is.
Yes. It's
Um,
usually to describe countries, but it can be individuals as well. So,
oh, well, I'm definitely an isolationist. And I just wasn't really like, didn't really like being around a lot of people.
sure. And I've been there
It's a
at
veteran,
times.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's also a veteran
Sure.
thing. Like we veterans tend to isolate. We think people don't get it, which people sometimes don't. They don't
A lot
get
of times
it.
they don't, and they never fully can.
Right, but it doesn't mean that we can't let people in.
You
I've
can
learned
try.
that.
Yes.
I've learned that, and I try
Correct.
to teach that as well.
Correct.
But I fell into the isolation. Like I didn't want anybody around me. I didn't want to bother anybody with my issues. I can handle it. All this other stupid ego alpha male crap that they tell you.
Sure.
Right.
And then after that, the same thing happened again with my son. I just didn't want to be around anybody because I felt one, I didn't want people to deal with that energy that I had. I felt like I had a lot of emotional baggage and energy that I was bringing with me.
Sure.
And two, I could just sort of, I know this wasn't the case, but it's almost like the whole pity thing. Like I didn't want to be around anybody because I could see the pity in their eyes, and then it reminded me of what I was going through.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does.
So I didn't want to just be around that
Kind of a
weird
vicious cycle.
circle
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
like, hey, your life is just sucking right now. So I didn't want to be around that.
Yeah.
So it was much easier for me to just close my blinds and go to bed,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which is what depression is. And then I slowly started coming out of that after my son. So,
And then
until
Yeah.
it hit again.
Yeah, until it was like a year and a half after my son.
Right before Christmas, right? Or right after Christmas, I think.
Right after Christmas. It was February.
Was it after? Okay.
Yeah. And January, February. I got word from Colleen that my mother had killed herself. Same way that my son did. She shot herself in the head, and um, so then it was like, well, man, like nobody really wants to be with me now, huh? Be around me, right?
Yeah.
So then that's when the issues started. See, the thing, I didn't have a, I didn't have a very good relationship with my mom.
Yeah,
Like,
it
I
was
had,
contentious for a long time, and I think you guys had some conversations over the years leading up to her, maybe one or two, where you drove
One or-
up there and
one or two, yeah, and
met with her for breakfast or lunch or something, but that was about it.
I took my son, yeah.
Yeah.
She wasn't the most. She was a pretty toxic person. And that's when I was trying to protect my kids as much as I could. And, you know, she made a couple comments about, like, when I had social media, she posted on Facebook. I think I told you this. I don't know if I did or not. She had posted on my wall, as a matter of fact, publicly, that she was like, I'm gonna kill myself on Christmas if you don't talk to me.
Yep.
One of those deals, right? And I know very well with these sort of behaviors that you can't feed that flame.
Yeah.
Right. I didn't want to be like, oh yeah, let me go talk to you, because then that's just a behavior that I'm supporting.
Sure.
So I didn't answer that. I just took a screenshot and called Colleen PD, and Colleen PD went and did a welfare check over there.
Yeah.
And of course they didn't find anything, because she was like, oh, I'm just kidding, and then fast forward a few months, and then that's when she did it. But yeah, that was it. Hit me harder than I would have thought, because I mean, it's my mom, obviously, but like I said, I hadn't seen her in a very long time, and I didn't know what to do about that relationship. And I was actually, as a matter of fact, I would talk to you about it. And I'll talk to even my therapist. Like I want to have a relationship with her. I don't know if I can, because every time I'm around her, it's not healthy for me.
Well, I remember you talking about when you were thinking about going up there.
Right.
You were concerned, but you genuinely wanted to at least make that effort. You knew what you were going to walk into.
Yeah. Yeah.
At least it sounded that way. You knew how she would react, but you still went.
I knew that there had to be a line.
Sure.
There's really not a lot of lines with her.
Yeah. Well, that's a lot of very direct involvement, and involvement may not be the right word, but experience with suicide, and I'm sure people that you served with, that you've had experience with, your own experience with suicide, much less Diego and then your mom.
Yeah, I had a couple of buddies as well do it. One in country, like right outside of our barracks in Iraq, and a couple when we got back here. And actually, and one of the kids that I was mentoring, Jack, as a matter of fact, he took his life as well.
So, obviously this conversation, or what led up to it, was bringing awareness to it. How do you do that? How do we bring more awareness to it? How do we help that? What do you think the road going forward, either us as individuals or as a country, how does that happen, in your opinion? You can't solve the problem necessarily, but how do we make it better? How do we address it?
I've been thinking about this, and I think that issue has a certain elasticity to it. We talk about it, and then it goes away.
Sure.
And we talk about it, and then it goes away again. And
until the next time.
time. And then wow, wish we could have done something or whatever, right? So there's
it's very true. It's a great point.
A lot of well-meaning people out there that are doing a lot of good work.
Sure.
Like you and just so when we have conversations of this, bringing I'll give you an action plan, right? Because this is what we want now, right? This is what we're talking about, what we can do.
Yeah.
Is not forget to talk to people and reach out to people. We live in a society nowadays that we don't do that. We don't know who the hell our neighbors are. We don't know what's going on. And I'm not saying pry and call every 5 seconds and be like, hey, how are you? But start educating yourself. If it's truly something that matters to you, start educating yourself in some of the signs of, suicide warning or suicide ideation and things that people are going through, and just kind of like keep each other in check.
Just check in.
Check in. That's what we did. We had battle buddies.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Just like we have battle buddies in the military. Doesn't mean we can't have whatever it is, buddies, society buddies for society. Right.
Society
check in on each other and say, hey, how you doing? Right.
Well, especially now with this pandemic going on where we can't get together as much as we normally would, and I think that coupled with social media society where we think that sharing and liking and commenting is real interaction. And in some instances, in some cases, obviously it is, in some way it is, but I'm glad to hear you say that, because that's really the only thing I could think of. I started out as I'm doing this 25 days is, talking about statistics and all that kind of stuff. And I think ultimately, I think a lot of people have heard those statistics in the past, but one of the messages, the only thing I could think of on a daily basis is just to encourage people, hey, you know what, just reach out to somebody.
Yeah.
And don't try to fix anything necessarily, just prepared to listen.
That truly is one of the first lines of defense that we have. Just check in on people.
Yeah.
People are going to be struggling. And you know what? Also realize that it might happen and there's nothing you could do about it.
Yeah.
You could feel guilty, and it's like, well, I should have called, I should have done this, I should have done that. And sometimes it just happens. Sometimes people just want to make that decision. And that's the decision that they feel it's right at the moment. Obviously it's a wrong one, right?
Yeah.
But just realize that we have people around us that can use our help.
Yeah. And just reaching out.
Yeah, which is what I've been sort of obsessed with these last, since I got out, obviously, but even more so lately, in trying to figure out how to reach more people.
Yeah. So, what do you think are the best resources, or do you have an opinion on it? You mentioned something I think that's really, really important: educating yourself on those signs.
Mm-hmm.
What's the best way to do that?
I hate saying the internet, but the internet, right? And there's actually the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. I mean, we're both involved in that.
Yep.
They have a lot of really good classes to sort of walk you through statistics and, courses of action and what do you do, what do you don't do, right? All these things. You can even get trained as a peer mentor with several different organizations. Like the Military Veteran Peer Network is one that they train. I think it's like an 8-hour class or something in identifying certain different scenarios and what to do with those scenarios. And there's another certification that it's like a week-long course. You don't have to work. Like I don't work as a peer mentor. I do it on the side, right?
Sure.
Just as I want to know this information so that I can see it. Because I thought I did, I clearly didn't. So now I'm branching out into more, instead of just veteran-specific suicide prevention and awareness, to more of a general sort of population.
Because it is a systemic issue. It's not just
hugely systemic and hugely has to with kids.
It's not getting better.
It's not getting better.
Worse.
Right. Is it ever going to go away? I don't know. I don't think so.
Wishful thinking, but I think we can make it better. I think we continue to destigmatize it.
Right.
I think it's been a big issue.
Just mental health in general.
Exactly. Mental health, just by, just the name itself seems to be a bad rap, mental illness, that sort of thing. I mean, because that's what it is, just like anything else that we have.
Right.
But then, talk about it. And I think I really like what you said, educate yourself in the Foundation for Suicide Prevention. They have a lot of resources, like you said, in classes, and there's tons of links that you can look at for local resources and local organizations and that sort of thing. And it's not that you have to become an expert, so to speak, but just knowing those signs. And I think that's critically important to me as a parent, knowing those signs, because, we've had those discussions within our own family, and you think that, wait a minute, it's never going to happen to me, or my own family. You think the kids are perfectly happy and healthy and all that. It's not always the case. And it hits you like a ton of bricks, but it happens.
But
you could be talking to somebody that could be extremely happy, and the next day gone.
Yeah.
Yep.
But
And you don't.
oh, sorry. I just wanted
No,
to chime
you-
in
you-
real quick.
What's up?
Yeah, I mean that's one of the reasons why I really appreciate you being like an open book right now, Aaron, because I think this is also one way, like doing long format like this. Or
Yeah.
I mean, I've been kind of quiet because I just want to kind of give you the stage and the spotlight, because I think getting your story out. I mean, I can always talk about my brother, but it's not me. But I just really wanted to give you that spotlight and just let you talk openly about this, because I feel like this is one of a really good way of reaching out to people right now. The fact that you're able to open up that way and just be just let it all out. I think it's going to help a lot of people. And we're pretty involved right now in with Defenders of Freedom. And
Phenomenal organization.
a really good organization. And I feel also very close to it as well because of my brother. But I recently did some interviews for them, some testimonials, and one of the things that I kind of focused on is what we kind of touched on earlier is just support. I was lucky enough to be able to interview a couple, and so the husband was the vet, and then I really wanted to interview the wife because in my experience with like my brother, and also my uncle, like the wives weren't really there for them, I feel. And so they divorced right away when the second, like my brother started going through a lot, and he went through a lot and he did it for his family. And so I really feel like I really wish he had that support at home. And so I kind of went at it from that perspective of like, I wanted her to share her story on how she's supporting, her husband. She was there. They both flew down from Michigan. And I thought that was just great, that she was there supporting him. And, I really do wish them the best. But going back to what we're talking about, I mean, just doing these long format videos or podcasts, I think it's going to go a long way. I mean, I learn so much from watching or listening to podcasts. And, you said earlier, like, you don't have to be an expert. I mean, why not? Why not get so informed that you just know every detail? So, the more you know, the more you can help. So, but yeah, it was just really a comment, but I also just wanted to thank you also for being that open. So I know it's hard, but I know it'll go a long way.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's one of those things I kind of promised myself that I wasn't going to keep anything in because it's very easy to.
Sure.
Yeah.
When we appreciate that you didn't,
Right.
Yeah.
it's not an easy thing to talk about. And I think that's part of the issue is, on perhaps our side, feeling comfortable about asking these questions. I'm not saying everybody's going to be as open as you.
Right.
So how do you start that conversation? And if anybody listens to this and goes, well, hey, that gives me, I'm going to call somebody and start that conversation, then,
Right.
I mean, you've had a tremendous impact.
Yeah.
And I think that the biggest, like we were saying, just community leaders, right?
Mm-hmm.
We can all be community leaders of our tribe. Doesn't have to be a neighborhood. Doesn't have to be an entire city. Could be just our group of friends, right?
Sure.
But be someone that is there for people just to, if and even if you have issues, please recognize that and say, hey, listen, I just need an ear. As a veteran, there are more than enough organizations out there that will provide camaraderie and support. Mm-hmm. And you can go out there. But the thing is that, we do isolate. We don't want to talk to people, right? Half the time I don't want to talk to people. So, but their organizations are there. And the same thing, I think it's a little harder for, calling them civilians, but for your civilians, because it's not as well known, the organizations that you can go out, like the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, to provide peer groups and meetings.
It's one of the biggest,
Meetup.com. Okay. A lot of people don't know, but meetup.com, you can go out there and there's so many different groups for you to just talk about anything. And grief support groups. And grief comes in many, many ways. It's not just about losing somebody. It's about any sort of grief, no matter how small, can lead to a hugely lasting impact on you as a person. So you have to take it seriously, especially when it has to do with your mental health.
Well, to echo Raul's comments, I think this has been fantastic and certainly appreciate it, and we've had several conversations, obviously, over the years, but to do it in this, in a more public format.
Oh, this isn't just for us three.
No, it's not. It's not. It's funny. I've mentioned on my podcast that Raul has been pushing me to do this type of thing. Raul, so Aaron, it kind of drives me nuts because he'll send me these texts all the time, but most of them are videos, and I complain to him. I'm like, you know what? I don't want to watch another podcast.
Because your phone sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys are.
iPhone.
I think
Yes.
Raul after that.
You need to get an iPhone. Yeah.
But
See,
go ahead, Raul. Come
I
on.
was gonna say that's why I like
Come
Aaron. I knew there's a reason why.
He hates that I have an Android, but it is an important medium, and it's something that I wasn't comfortable with, and getting there certainly, but I love having good conversations, and they're not always going to be comfortable, and again, I think that hopefully this will allow people to at least start conversations, with others.
I hope so. Because you talk to someone, change their life, and then they talk to somebody else, and then talk to somebody else. It's the exponential effect. I mean, hopefully we can do that for each other as a society. Because if we're stuck watching the Kardashians, nothing's gonna get done.
It's true. It's funny, but it's true.
And Aaron has extricated himself from social media almost completely.
Thank
correct?
God, yeah.
That was.
I
wish I could.
I don't make a lot of good decisions, but that was one.
Yeah, I did notice his temperament came down, and yeah. Well, and I love your statement about being a leader within your tribe, so to speak, and speaking up and kind of allowing, making an environment that people feel comfortable talking about.
Welcoming, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, if you just sit there and wait for somebody to reach out and talk about their issues, they may never do that. In fact, they're probably not going to.
Right.
So you have to first make them feel comfortable, and then be more proactive, because it's not enough to just sit on the sidelines and do nothing.
Yeah, and don't take it personal when people don't want to talk. Because it's
True.
not about you. It's about their timing and
exactly.
And I mean, just to reiterate the whole tribe thing, a tribe could be just one more other person or two more other people. It's a group of people you've identified that are your people.
Yep.
Like we all have that. Like I have my very small tribe, and I will protect that to the death. Right. And it could look like anything. Just take care of each other. And we forget that. We do forget that as a society, and as veterans as well, sometimes we do, but I think as a larger issue as a society, we forget that, we're all in this together, I guess.
Well, and you've done such a good job, and you kind of begrudgingly talk about all of the nonprofits and groups that you support and all that, but you do such a good job at it, up to and including, he really, if I'm not mistaken, you are the reason, or part of the reason, that Georgetown is the first Purple Heart city, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I'm the only reason. No, no. I was part of that effort. Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of those little minor cool things that you can do for veterans.
But it may sound minor, but it's really not, and to be able to see, and real briefly, and it's not really what we're talking about, but if you wouldn't mind, I mean, talk about it a little bit, about what you did there.
Well, I had no idea what that meant. It was funny enough in the Facebook group, in the Military Order of the Purple Heart, which I'm part of, people started posting. It was like, hey, so-and-so city, so-and-so is the Purple Heart, like, state or whatever. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? That makes no sense. What are you guys doing? You guys giving like free puppies? Like, what are you doing? So I found out it's mainly, and I don't want to minimize it, obviously. There's nothing to minimize there. But it's essentially just the people of that city saying, it's like, hey, or the government saying, hey, like, we know you're here. We know you're here. We support you. We want to do everything you can for you to feel welcome. And therefore, we're going to have this designation, and we're going to show it proudly from every corner of the city, because we know that you guys are important. I don't want to say you're in the shadows, because definitely not. I mean, because everybody's, if you get a Purple Heart, you get a Purple Heart plates. But just acknowledging that we're there. So that's what it was. And then I had to go in front of the council, council member Rachel John Rowan in Georgetown has been absolutely amazing in helping me get a bunch of stuff with veterans past. And she is an amazing, Georgetown in general, but she has really done a lot of work for veterans.
You have a good relationship with a lot of the leadership in Georgetown.
Georgetown's great. I don't even know why I live in Cedar Park. Georgetown's great. Yeah, no, I like Georgetown and what they're doing for veterans and some of the other projects that we've done there. And but yeah, so we beat out, what was it, Bastrop? I think we beat out. But like the only reason we beat out Bastrop for that was because I had a printer with a scanner on it, and I was able to scan it and send it in
to be the first.
Like 5 hours before they did it.
And what does that mean? Tell us just real briefly.
As far as
mean to be a Purple Heart city.
Well, like I just said, it's a placeholder to say, we citizens of XYZ city, sure, we recognize that there's Purple Heart recipients here. We recognize your sacrifice. We're thankful you're here. We want you to be part of the community. And we're thankful for your service, right? It's one of those deals.
And every time we go to Mesquite Creek, you get much better parking than I do.
Oh, absolutely. That one in front of Roots, absolutely.
I had that
one put there just for me. And all, and all the signs too. So yeah, no, it's yeah.
I certainly, I know that
and Mayor Dale Ross, by the way. Can't forget the mayor. The mayor's been really, really like just amazing with veterans, influential, and just in the city in general.
Chief of police, all that.
The chief of police, they're really great. Chief of police, former Marine. I'm not gonna hold that against him, but he's a great guy. But they've all been really open to any idea that I had, any crazy idea that I had. It's
very
a cool
welcoming.
City. Very, very welcoming. Yeah. And if you guys do the Purple Heart integration project, I think it's PHIP project. It's another nonprofit that we started. It's a community that we're trying to get started. Now that I haven't been I sort of took a step back for a while, but we're essentially bought 20 acres off right in Georgetown and we're trying to build a community for severely disabled Purple Heart recipients. PHI project.org. Go check it out. Give them money because that's a cool thing to do. And then hopefully we can build some homes. I think it's like 20 homes that we're trying to build on site.
Container homes, that sort of thing.
No, actual single family homes.
Really?
There, we have the plans up on the website. You guys can check out. It was container homes, but
Well, and maybe you get an organization like Icon who's done a phenomenal job at helping build housing for those that really need it.
Speaking of that, Mr. Build Division, Senior Vice President.
I had to throw in there a little bit about different types of
we are looking for partners, builder partners. So
all right.
Just saying.
I happen to know a few. So
okay, got it.
Well, sincerely appreciate the time. We love you. Your family to us.
Absolutely. Anything I can do. You asked me something. I'm where and when. That's all I ask.
Certainly appreciate your candor and all of that. And
thank you too, but I appreciate you.
Oh yeah.
No worries.
Oh no, this is great. Trust me. I have had a really good time. Very good experience. So thank you.
Well, with that, I guess we'll close up unless either of you have any last minute comments or thoughts. But I think that's a wrap.
Get off of social media.
All right. Thanks, everybody.